Hello, everyone. This is Black Wall Street Chronicles, and we're back at it again. Today's episode, I'm going to talk about the history of hip hop. But before we get started, I have a couple of announcements. I You can follow me on my Instagram account, which is BlackCock8840. That's BLCK KIGE840. On there, you can go to my bios. You can find my Twitter account, my Twitch account, and my Facebook account. Also, you can find my Anchor account where I have streaming podcast on Anchor. You can also listen to my podcast on the radio. I will have a link below after the stream. Okay, now let's get into the history of hip hop, kids. Experience some difficulties. Something with the cell phone towers ever since the hurricane. I don't know, but it seems that I cannot get on live whatsoever. Restarted my cell phone. Give me a second. I have not had any luck with this episode at all. I've been trying to upload this episode like 3 times in a row, and always something happens. I don't even understand why, y'all. Cell phone towers is down because of Hurricane Ida. Give me a moment. Okay, here we go, guys. Thank you for your patience. Hip hop music, as also known as rap music, is a genre of popular music developed in the United States by the inner city African American or Latino Americans in the Bronx of New York City in the 1970s and consists of a synthesized rhythmic sound that commonly accompanies rapping, a rhythmic and rhyming speech that is chanted. It is developed as a part of hip hop culture, a subculture defined by four key stylistic elements: MCing, DJing, and graffiti writing. Other elements include sampling beats or bass lines from records, and rhythmic beatboxing, which often uses solely to rapping. Hip hop is more properly denotes the practice of an entire subculture. The term hip hop music is sometimes used synonymously with the term rap music. Though rapping is not a required component of hip hop music, the genre may also incorporate other elements of hip hop culture, including DJing, turntablism, scratching, and beatboxing in instrumental tracks. The stylistic origins of hip hop is funk, disco, electric music, dub, rhythm and blues, reggae, dancehall, jazz, toasting, performance poetry, spoken word signifying the dozen brides scat singing talking blues. Early 1970s. Cultural origins is early 1970s, the Bronx, New York City. Typical instruments: rapping, singing, turntables, DJ, mixer, drum machine, music synthesizer, keyboard. Derivative forms of hip hop is Baltimore club, breakbeat, Florida bass, funk core, ghetto house, ghetto tech, glitch hop, grime, ambient Latin freestyle, new metal, reggaeton, wonky. The subgenres of hip hop are alternative, boom bap, bounce, British, Brooklyn trill, chap hop, Chicano rock, chopping school, chopper, Christian, cloud rap, comedy, conscious, crunk core, dirty rap, drill, East Coast freestyle rap, gangster rap, G-funk, hardcore, hipster hop, horrorcore, hyphy, instrumental, jerking, Jewish, Latin trap, mafioso rap, Memphis rap, Miami bass, mumble rap, nerdcore, P-funk, political, progressive, roll rap, snap music, southern trap, tread, turntablism, UK chill, underground, and West Coast. The fusion genres of hip hop: there's country rap, electro, emo rap, hip hop soul, hip house, industrial hip hop, jazz rap, lo-fi hip hop, new jack swing, pop rap, punk rap, raga hip hop, rap opera, rap rock, rap metal, trap metal, rap core, trip hop. The regional fusion genres are Afro swing bongo, flava, boomba music, combo rap, grunge, jip hip hop, Gazing hip hop, hip life, LBG, LBO, rap, cueto, low bat, Murhouse, Oswako, Nemili Palio, Nuyorican rap, Romani hip hop, some Songa Salsa Stranja, Herba Pasaga Vigilante rap, Zinji flavor. The regional scenes in hip hop is in the continent of Africa, continent of Asia, the Middle East, continent of Europe, the continent of North America, and the Oceanic continent. Okay. Hip hop is both a musical genre and a culture was formed during the 1970s when block parties became increasingly popular in New York City, particularly among African American youth residing in the Bronx. At block parties, DJs played percussive beats of popular songs using two turntables the DJ mixer to be able to play breaks from two copies of the same record, alternating from one to the other and extending the break. Hip-hop's early evolution occurred as sampling technology and drum machines became widely available and affordable. Turntablist techniques such as scratching and beat-making developed along the breaks and Jamaican toasting. And chanting vocal style was used over the beats. Rapping developed as a vocal style in which the artist speaks and chants along rhythmically and instrumental and synthesized beat. Hip-hop was not officially recorded to play on radio and television to 1979, largely due to poverty during the genre's birth and lack of acceptance out of ghetto neighborhoods. Old school hip-hop was the first mainstream wave of the genre, marked by its disco-influenced, party-oriented lyrics. 1980s marked the diversification of hip-hop as the genre developed more complex styles and spread around the world. New school hip-hop was the genre's second wave, marked by its electro sound that led to the golden age of hip-hop. Innovatively between the mid-1980s and 1990s, that also developed hip-hop's own album era. The gangster rap subgenre focused on violent lifestyles and impoverished conditions of inner-city African-American youth gained popularity at the time. West Coast hip-hop was dominated by G-Funk in the early 1990s, while East Coast hip-hop was dominated by jazz rap, alternative hip-hop, and hardcore rap. Hip-hop continued to diversify at the same time with other regional styles emerging, such as Southern rap and Atlanta hip-hop. Hip-hop became a best-selling genre in the mid-1990s and the top-selling music genre by 1999. The popularity of hip-hop music continued through the late 1990s and mid-2000s. Bling era where hip-hop influence increasingly found their way into other genres of popular music, such as neo-soul, nu metal, and R&B. The United States also saw success of regional styles such as crunk, a southern genre that emphasized the beats and music more than the lyrics. Alternative hip-hop began to secure a place in the mainstream, due to part to Chroncile's success of its artists. During the late 2000s and early 2010s block era, rappers were able to build up a following through online methods of music distribution, such as social media and blogs. Mainstream hip-hop took a more melodic, sensitive direction following the commercial decline of gangster rap. The trap and mumble rap subgenres has become the most popular form of hip-hop during the late 2010s and early 2020s. In 2017, rap music was usurped by hip-hop as the most popular genre in the United States. Etymology. The words hip and hop have a long history behind the two words being used together. In the 1950s, older folks referred to teen house parties such as hippity hops. The creation of the term hip-hop is also credited to Keith Cowboy rapper and Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. However, Love Bug Starsky, Keith Cowboy, and DJ Hollywood used the term when the music was still known as disco rap. It is believed that Crow Boy created the term while teasing a friend who had just joined the U.S. Army by scat singing the words hip-hop, 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 in a way that mimicked the rhythmic dance of cadence of soldiers marching. Cowboy later worked the hip-hop cadence into part of the stage performance, For example, he would say something along the lines, I said hip hop, hippity hip hop, and hop your dope stop, a rap to the bang bang boogie, up jump the boogie to the real to the boogie to beat. I know that song, which was quickly used by other artists such as the Sugar Hill Gang and Rappers Delight, Universal Zulu Nation's founder African Bambaataa, also known as the Godfather, is credited first using the term to describe subculture in which the music belonged, although it is also suggested that it was a derogatory term to describe the type of music. African Bambaataa is very controversial. It's a whole nother other story. The term was first used in the print to refer to music by reporter Robert Flipping Jr. in a February 1979 article in the New Pittsburgh Courier, and to refer to culture in January 1982 interview with African Bambaataa by Michael Holman in the East Village High. The term of that year in another Bambaataa interview in the Village Voice by Stephen Hager, later author of a 1984 History of Hip Hop. There are disagreements about whether or not the terms hip hop and rap can be used interchangeably. This even happens among hip hop's most knowledgeable writers, performers, and listeners. The most common view that is seen is that hip hop is a cultural movement that emerged in the South Bronx in New York City during the 1970s, which MC rapping became one of the four elements. Hip hop's other three essential elements are graffiti art, breakdancing, and DJing. Rap music has become the most far celebrated expression of hip hop culture, largely as a result of being the easiest to market to mass audience. Musical elements anticipating hip hop music have been indicted in blues, jazz, and rhythm and blues recordings in the 1950s and earlier, including several records by Bo Diddley. Muhammad Ali's 1963 spoken word album, I Am the Greatest, is regarded to writers as an early example of hip hop. Pigsmeat Martin 1968 single, Here Comes the Judge, is one of the several songs said to be the earliest hip hop record. Leading up to hip hop, there were spoken word artists such as the Last Poets who released their debut album in 1970. And Gil Scott-Heron, who gained a wide audience in his 1971 track, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. These artists combined spoken word and music to create a kind of photo rap vibe. The hip-hop is music culture formed during the 1970s in New York City from the multicultural exchange between African American youth from the United States and young immigrants of the children of immigrants from the countries in the Caribbean. Hip-hop music in its infancy has been described as an outlet, a voice for the disenfranchised youth of marginalized backgrounds and low-income areas, as the hip-hop culture reflected the social, economic, and political realities of their lives. Many of the people who helped establish hip-hop culture, including DJ Kool Herc, DJ Disco Wiz, Grandmaster Flash, and African Bambaataa, were of Latin and Caribbean origin. It is hard to pinpoint the exact musical influences that most affected the sound and culture of early hip-hop because of the multicultural nature of New York City. Hip-hop's early pioneers were influenced by a mix of music for their origin cultures and the cultures they was exposed to as a result of the diversity of U.S. cities. The New York City experienced a heavy Jamaican hip-hop influence during the 1990s. This influence was brought by the cultural shifts, particularly because of the heightened immigration of Jamaicans to New York City and the American-born Jamaican youth who were coming of age in the 1990s. DJ Kool Herc, the Jamaican DJ, is recognized as one of the earliest hip-hop DJs and artists. Some credit him with officially originating hip-hop music through his 1973 Back to School jam. In the 1970s, block car parties were increasingly popular in New York City, particularly among African American, Caribbean, Latino youths residing in the Bronx. Block parties incorporated DJs who played popular genres of music, especially funk and soul music, due to possible reception. DJs isolated the percussive breaks of popular songs. This technique was common in the Jamaican dub music, and it was largely introduced into New York by immigrants from the Caribbean, called 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐞, one of the pioneers of hip hop. Because of the percussive breaks in funk, soul, and disco records were generally short, 𝐸 and other DJs began using two turntables to extend the breaks. 𝐸 created a movement for hip hop music or culture by building upon the Jamaican tradition of improv toasting, spoken type of boastful poetry, and speech over music. August 11, 1973, DJ Kool Herc was the DJ at his sister back to school party. He extended the beat by record by using two record players, isolation percussion breaks by using a mixer to switch between two records. 𝐸's experiments with making the music with record players became what is known now as breaking and scratching. A second key musical element in hip-hop music is MCing. MCing is the rhythmic spoken delivery of rhymes and wordplay, delivered at the first without accompaniment and later done over a beat. The spoken style was influenced by African-American style of capping, a performance where men tried to outdo each other in the originality of their language or tried to gain the favor of their listeners. The basic elements of hip-hop, boasting raps, rivals, posses, uptown throwdowns, and political and social commentary were all long present in African-American music. MCing and rapper performers moved back and forth between the predominance of toasting songs, packed with a mix of boasting, slackness, and sexual innuendo in a more topical, political, and socially conscious style. The role of MC originally was a master of ceremonies for the DJ dance event. The MC would introduce the DJ and try to pump up the audience. The MC spoke between the DJ songs, urging everyone to get up and dance. MCs will also tell jokes, use their energetic language and enthusiasm to rev up the crowd. Eventually, this including role developed in the longer sessions of spoken rhythmic wordplay and rhyming, which became rapping. By 1978, hip-hop music has become a mainstream genre. It is across the world in the 1990s with controversial gangster rap. 𝐸 also developed upon breakbeat DJing. With the breaks of funk songs, the poet most suited to dance, usually percussion breaks, were isolated and repeated for the purposes of all-night dance parties. This form of music playback using hard funk or rap formed the basis of hip-hop music. Campbell's announcements and extortions to dancers will lead to the significant remix spoken accompaniment now known as rapping. He dubbed his dancers break boys and break girls, or simply b-boys and b-girls. According to 𝐸, breaking was also street slang for getting excited and acting energetically. DJs such as Grand Wizard Theodore, Grandmaster Flash, and Jazzy J refined and developed to use of breakbeats, including cutting and scratching, as a turntable manipulation continued to evolve a technique that came from needle dropping. Needle dropping was created by Grandmaster Flash. It is a prolonged short drum breaks by playing two copies of a record simultaneously and moving the needle one turntable back to the start break while others played. The approach was used by 𝐸 and was widely co-opted in the late 1970s. DJs were releasing 12-inch records where they could rap to the beat. Popular tunes included Curtis Bow's The Breaks, the Sugar Hill Gang's Delight. 𝐸 and other DJs will connect their equipment to power lines and perform at venues such as public basketball courts and at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, Bronx, New York, now a historic building. The equipment consisted of numerous speakers, turntables, or one or more microphones. By using this technique, DJs could create a variety of music, but according to rap by David Troop, at its worst, technique could turn the night into endless and inevitably boring stall. A rapper lyricist with Pete DJ Jones is also credited with being the first rap lyricist to call himself an MC. Street games were prevalent in the poverty of the South Bronx, and much of the graffiti, rapping, and b-boarding at these parties were all artistic variations of the competition or one-upmanship of street games. Sensing that gang members' often violent urges could be turned into creative ones, African Bambaataa founded the Zulu Nation, a loose confederation of the street dance crews, graffiti artists, and rap musicians. By the late 1970s, the culture had gained media attention, with Billboard magazine printing an article titled "B Beats Bombarding Bronx," commenting on the local phenomena and mentioning influential figures such as Kool Herc. The New York City blackout of 1977 saw widespread looting, arson, and other citywide disorders, especially in the Bronx, where a number of looters stole DJ equipment from electronic stores. As a result, the hip-hop genre, barely known outside of the Bronx at the time, grew to an astounding rate from 1977 onward. DJ Kool Herc's house parties gained popularity and later moved to outdoor venues to accommodate more people. Hosted in parks, these outdoor parties became a means of expression and an outlet for teenagers where instead of getting into trouble on the streets, teens now had a place to extend their pent-up energy. Tony Tone, a member of Cold Crush Brothers, stated that hip-hop saved a lot of lives. For inner city youth, participating in hip-hop culture became aware of dealing with the hardships of life as minorities within America, an outlet to deal with the risk of violence and rising gang culture. MC Kid Lucky mentions that people use breakdance against each other instead of fighting. Inspired by DJ Kool Herc, African Bambaataa created a street organization called Universal Zulu Nation, centered around hip-hop as a means to draw teenagers out of gang life, drugs, and violence. The lyrical content of early rap groups focused on social issues, most notably in a seminal track, The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, which discussed the realities of life in the housing projects. Young Black Americans coming out of the civil rights movement may have hip-hop culture in the 1980s and 1990s to show the limitations of the hip-hop movement. Hip-hop gave young African Americans a voice to let their issues be heard. Like rock and roll, hip-hop is vigorously opposed by conservatives because it romanticizes violence, law breaking, and gangs. Also gave people a chance for fictional gain by reducing the rest of the world to its consumers to its social concerns. In the late 1979, Debbie Harry of Blondie took Nile Rodgers, a chick, to such an event as the main backing track used to the break Chick's Good Times. The new style influenced Harry, and Blondie's later hit became 1981's Rapture, became the first single containing hip-hop elements to hit #1 in the U.S. Billboard Hot 100. The song itself is usually considered new wave and fuses heavy pop music elements, but there is an extended rap by Harry near the end. Boxer Muhammad Ali, as an influential African-American celebrity, was broadly covered in the media. All influential several elements of hip-hop music, both in the boxing ring and media interviews. Ali became known in the 1960s for being a rhyming trickster in the 1960s. Ali used a funky delivery for his comments, which included boast, comical trash talk, and endless quotable lines. According to the Rolling Stone, it is freestyle skills, a reference to type of vocal improvisation in which lyrics are recited with no particular subject or structure. And his rhymes, flow, and braggadocio were one day became typical of old school MCs like Run DMC and LL Cool J. The later Silent Ali influence. Hip-hop music in its infancy has been described as an outlet for voice for the disenfranchised youth of low-income and marginalized economic areas, as the hip-hop culture reflected the social, economic, and political realities of their lives. Hip-hop's early evolution occurred around the same time that sampling technologies and drum machines became widely available to the general public. and cost was affordable to averaging consumer, not just professional studios. Drum machines and samplers were combined in machines that came to be known as MPCs or music production centers. Early examples of which would include the Lin 9000. The first sampler broadly adopted to create this new type of music was the mellotron used in combination with the TR-808 drum machine. Mellotrons and Lins were succeeded by the AKI in the late 1980s. Turntablist techniques such as rhythmic scratching, pushing a record back and forth while the needle's in a groove to create new sounds and sound effects, an approach attributed by Grand Wizard Theodore, beat mixing and beat masking and beat juggling, eventually developed with the percussion breaks creating a musical accompaniment or bass that could be rapped over in a manner similar to signifying. As well, the art of Jamaican toasting, a style of talking and chanting into a microphone, often in a Boston style, while beats played over a sound system was an important influence in the development of hip hop music. Toasting is another influence inspired by Jamaican dub music. Rapping, also as MCing or MCing, is a vocal style in which the artist speaks lyrically and rhythmically, in rhyme and verse, generally to an instrumental or synthesized beat. These almost always in 4/4 time signature can be created by sampling and sequencing portions of other songs by a producer. They also incorporated synthesizers, drum machines, and live bands. Rappers may write, memorize, and improvise their lyrics and perform their works as a cappella or to a beat. Hip hop music predates the introduction of rapping into a hip hop culture, and rap vocals are absent for many hip hop tracks, such as Hip Hop Bebop by Parrish, Chinese Women by Eric B. and Rockin' Fash. It was Rocking the Planet by Hashem and Destination Earth by Nucleus. However, the majority of the genre have been accompanied by rap vocals, such as sci-fi influenced electro hip hop Warp 9. Female rappers appeared on the scene in the late 1970s and early 80s, including Bronx artist MC Sha Rock, member of the Funky 4+1, credited to being the first female MC, and the Sequence, a hip hop trio named Sugar Hill Records, the first all female group to release a rap record, Funky Love. The roots of rapping are found in African American music, untimely African music, particularly of the greats of West African culture. The African American traditions of signifying the dozens and jazz poetry all influence hip hop music, as well as the call and responsive patterns of African and African American religious ceremonies. Early popular radio disc jockeys of the Black Appeal radio took breaks into broadcasting announcing by using these techniques. Under the jive talk of the post World War II swing era in the 1940s and 1950s. DJ Nat D was the MC of most parties, fitness places for inspiring musicians to break into the show business. Amateur night at the Palace Theater on Beach Street, Memphis, Tennessee. There he was a master of ceremonies from 1935 and 1947, along with his sideman DJ Rufus Thomas. It was he who perfected the dozens, signifying in a personality jock jive pattern that would become his stick when he became the first black radio announcer on the air of South Mason-Dixon line. Jive popularized Black Appeal radio. It was the language of the black youth. The double entendres and obscene wordplay was a godsend to the radio, reinvigorating ratings and flagging outlets that were losing audience share and flipping into the new format of R&B with black announcers. The 10% of the African Americans who heard the broadcasters found the music promoted in radio. 1949 was also in the jukeboxes up north in the cities. There were also DJs like Chicago L. Benson, WJJD, Austin Dr. Hep, K-Vec, Alanda's Jockey Jock, and Weird speaking the same rhyming, Candace Lading rap style. One Once the right old stations realized the new upstarts were grabbing the black market share and that the big band swing jazz was no longer hip, some white DJs emasculated the Southern mushroom jive talk, letting their audience think that they were too African American, playing the blues and bebop. Richburg had a Southern drawl that listeners to Lashville with WLLC. Nighttime R&B programming was never performed along riot to a black DJ. As all other DJs at the station, Dr. Herb Cap Rhymes was published in the Dictionary of Jive Talks. Dr. Jive, Dr. Headcat in 1953. Jockey Jack is infamous Jack the Ripper of Family Affair fame. After his radio convention that was attend for every rap artist in the 1980s and 1990s. These jive talking rappers of the 1950s Black Appeal radio format was the source of inspiration for soul singer James Brown and musical comedy acts such as Rudy Ray Moore, Pigmeat Martin, and Blowfly. They're often considered as godfathers of hip-hop music. Within New York City, performers of spoken word poetry and music artists such as the Last Poets, 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐤, and Jamal Massenur had a significant impact on the post-era culture of the 1960s and 1970s, and thus the social environment in which hip-hop music was created. Jamaican origins of outdoor sound systems. AM radio and many stations were limited by broadcast day and special licenses were required to transmit at night. Those that had such licenses were heard far out to sea in the Caribbean, where Jocko Henderson and Jockey Jack were the American DJs who were listened to at night from broadcast transmitters. Located in Miami, Florida. Jocko came to have an outsized influence of Jamaican MCs during the 50s as R&B music played on Miami stations was different than what played on JBC, which rebroadcast BBC and local music styles. In Jamaica, DJs would set up large roadside sound systems in towns and villages, playing music for informal gatherings. Mostly folks who wandered from country hills looking for excitement at the end of the week. There, the DJs would allow toast by an MC, which copied the style of American DJs listened to at AM transistor radios. It was by this method that jive talk, rapping, and rhyming was transposed to the island, and locally the style was transformed by Jamaican lyricism or the local patois. Hip-hop as music and culture formed during the 1970s in New York City from the multicultural exchange between African-American youth from the United States and young immigrants of the children immigrants from the countries in the Caribbean. What would be later described as block parties in the U.S. was reality since all the 1950s all over Jamaica as MCs were talking and rapping over records at sound system parties since 1943. Someone's influenced by the vocal style of early African-American radio MCs, including Jocko Henderson's Rocket Ship Show of the 1950s, where rhymed and was influenced by scat singing, which could be heard over the radio in Jamaica. The first records by Jamaican DJs including Sir Lol Comic, The Great Wooga Wooga 1967, came as a part of the local dancehall culture, which features specials, unique maxes of versions pressed on the soft disc of, or acidic disc in rappers called DJs, such as 𝐤𝐨𝐬𝐿, Count Machu, U-Roy, I-Roy, Big Youth, and many others. Recordings of the Talkover, which is different style from the dancehall DJ style, also made by Jamaican artists such as Prince Buster and Lee Scratch Perry, as early as 1967. Somehow rooted in the talking blues tradition, the first length Jamaican DJ record was a duet of Rastafarian topic by Kingston Ghetto Drillers U-Roy and Peter Tosh, named Righteous Ruler. produced by Lee Scratch Perry in 1969. The first DJ hit record was Fire Corner by Coastal Downbeats on DJ Kingston that year. 1970 saw a multitude of DJ hit records of the rake of U-Roy's early massive hits, Most Family, Wake the Town, and many others. As a tradition, remix was also which also starred in Jamaica, where it's called version and dub. Developed, established young Jamaican DJ rappers from that period who have been working for sound systems for years, was subtly recorded and had many local hit records, wildly contributing to the reggae craze triggered by Bob Marley's impact in the 1970s. The main Jamaican DJs of the early 1970s were King Sticks, Samuel First, Count Machoui, Johnny Lover, who versioned songs by Bob Marley and the Wailers as early as 1971. Dave Barker, Scotty Lloyd Young, Charlie Ace, and others as soon-to-be reggae stars U-Roy, Dennis L. Capone, I-Roy, Prince Jazzbo, Prince 4I, Big Youth, and Dillinger. Dillinger scored the most international rap hit record with the Cocaine in My Brain in 1976, based on Doing Any Way You Want to Do Rhythm by People's Choice as a re-recorded Sly and Robbie, where he even used a New York accent, consciously aiming at the New York City rap market. The Jamaican DJ dance music was deeply rooted in a sound system tradition, which made music available to poor people in a very poor country where live music was only played in clubs and hotels and patronized by the middle and upper classes. In 1970, the Jamaican sound system enthusiast DJ Kool Herc moved to the Bronx, taking him with Jamaican sound system culture and teamed up with another Jamaican, Cloak LaRock, at the mic. Other influences, notably music synchronizer Grandmaster Flowers of Biscuit and Sam Rizzo Theodore of the Bronx, contributed to the birth of hip-hop in New York. Although it was downplayed in most U.S. books about hip-hop, the main root of the sound system was Jamaican. The roots of rap in Jamaica are explained in detail with Bruno Bloom's book, Lay Rap. DJ Kool Herc and Cloak LaRock provided an influence on the vocal style of rapping by delivering simple poetry verses over funk music breaks. The after-party goers show little interest in their previous attempts to integrate reggae-influenced toasting into musical sets. DJs and MCs will often call a response chants, often consisting on a basic chorus, to allow the performer to gain his thoughts. 1, 2, 3, y'all to the beat. Later, MCs grew more varied in their vocal rhythmic delivery, incorporating brief rhymes, often with a sexual satirical theme, in an effort to differentiate themselves and entertain the audience. These early raps, incorporated by the dozens, a product of African American culture. Kool Herc and the Herculoids were the first hip-hop group to gain recognition in New York, but the number of MCs teams increased over time. One of these collaborations between former gangs such as African Mbadi's Universal Zulu Nation, now an international organization, Melly Mel, a rapper with the Furious Five, is also credited with being the first rap lyricist to call himself an MC. During the early 1970s, b-boying around those block parties as b-boys and b-girls got in front of the audience to dance in the instinctive and frenetic style. The style was documented for the release to a worldwide audience, first time of documentaries, much as The Style Wars, Wild Style, and Beat Street. The term b-boy was coined by DJ Kool Herc to describe the people who were ready for the break section of the song, showing off athleticism, spinning on the stage to break dance in a distinctive phonetic style. Although there were some early MCs that recorded solo projects of the note as DJ Hollywood, Curtis Blow, and Spoonie G, the frequency of solo artists did not increase until later with the rise of soloists with stage presence as drama, such as LL Cool J. Most early hip-hop was dominated by groups where the collaboration between the members was integral to the show. An example would be the early hip-hop group Funky 4+1, who performed in such a manner on their Saturday Night Live in 1981. Yeah, and that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the birth of hip-hop and the history of hip-hop, how it all started. Thank you for listening to the live stream of my podcast. This is Black Wall Street Chronicles, and I'm signing off.